Hey there, everyone. This is great to have you all back again. It's
Hello
so,
again. Hi,
yeah,
everybody.
and sorry about last week. It was the craziest thing. We had to leave our house because the electricity supply board needed to do maintenance. So they said, you're not going to have any power from 9 a.m. until 4 p.m. We were like, oh, that'll be fine. So then, we went home at 4 and the power didn't come on, and 5 o'clock came and the power didn't come on, and 6 o'clock came and the power didn't come on. 7 o'clock came and the power didn't come on. I think it eventually came on about 8 o'clock or something. So sorry about that. Want you to find out. Hi everyone. Um, I'm trying to make sure that you just chat with us, but I don't know how to do that. But anyway, I want you to complete this survey if you don't mind. We'd love to know what you thought about the last session. So you can fill that out in your own time. And we've a load of things to get through today. I'd like to talk about, so the last time we spoke, there was a big test flight of the Starship about to happen. So we're going to, if we have time, we'll talk about that. We also have a launch tomorrow of a European astronaut happening around lunchtime tomorrow. So we want to talk about that. What do you want to talk about, Dave?
Well, I'll do a little review like I like to do of what we did the following week. And we're going to talk about, we talked about the space station, so I'm not going to go back and revisit that, but I want to talk about a little bit more about what goes on in there in orbit. And then the other thing is, how do you get back? How do you get back from orbit? But
Yeah.
before we go there, I have something to show you guys.
Yeah. So fill out that survey. I'm going to repeat it for people who've just come late.
So
We want you to fill out a survey. 1 second. And if you have any questions, put them in the Q&A. Just put them in the Q&A. We're here to answer your questions as well. So we're sitting side by side and we're hoping that you can hear us both really well. If you can't, just say we can't hear David and I'll bring my computer closer. Okay.
let us know if you send a comment if you can hear us okay, because
Yeah.
I'm actually talking through Niamh's computer.
Yeah. Because we've two sets of slides. Okay, what have you got there, Dave?
So I've been waiting for this big box to come in. You guys can see it.
What
You see
is
the
it?
little logo there.
What is it?
This is a box of rockets for you guys.
Show them, show them, show them.
So we have a box of rockets, and at the very end, I'm gonna open up the package, and we'll show you the parts and stuff for the rocket. I've got these for everybody to build their own rocket that we're gonna fly.
So we're going to talk to Sandra from Loud ABC, and we'll probably do it on over the summer on a weekend day. I mean, like a Saturday or something, because you have to build your rocket, you have to decorate it, and then we have to launch it. And I think with the summer, with the long nights, we can do all that in a couple of hours, and we're going to have an amazing time. And every family gets to build their rocket, gets to decorate their rocket, and gets to launch a rocket. So it's going to be great. So that's coming up. Oh yeah, and you get to keep it as well. And we'll be doing other launches, so you can have it to keep launching. All right, Dave. So where do you want to go next?
All right, so I want to try and pull up my slides here, and what I'm
Oh,
trying
we
to
have a
do.
question. Which European astronaut is going to space soon? Great question. So it's a Polish astronaut called Sławomir, and he is what's known as a project astronaut. So the European Space Agency in November 2022 or 2023, I think, they selected 17 astronauts. 5 of them were crew or full-time career astronauts. And then the others were known as project astronauts, so that at some stage, their country would work with the European Space Agency for them to have a limited launch to the International Space Station. So we've already had a guy from Switzerland do it. And now the next project astronaut to do it is a Polish astronaut called Sławomir. And so he is going up for 2 weeks to the International Space Station. So I'm going to tell you more about it after Dave's talked a little bit more. Okay, go for it, Dave.
Okay, so I'm going to turn on my screen. Can everybody see that?
Yeah, can everybody see Dave's screen okay?
So, my title, there we go. All right, so we're going to go ahead and press on. I'm going to try and go through this relatively fast.
I'll ask questions for you if I
Give
think
enough time. I want to make sure we had enough time to go open the rocket package and show you what's there, and maybe a couple of other things. So here we go. Let's see. Okay, well, there we go. Okay, so here we're going to do a review from last week. Remember, we talked about satellites. So just very quickly, what are the main parts of a satellite? So one of the things, remember, we have to have a propulsion system. It's got to get the satellite to where it needs to be in orbit. So that's what the propulsion or the motor system, that's what the rocket motor thing.
So that's the name for like the rocket, the thing that gets it to move forward.
They use the word propulsion, but it's the rocket. Then once it gets into orbit, it's got to be able to point in the right direction and do what it's supposed to do. And that's what we call the guidance, navigation, and control system. And there's different ways that that satellites do that, but it's important to be able to orient it. And these big paddles you see on the side represent solar panels. That's how they get their electricity. Satellites often have batteries, and there have been a few sent up in the past that actually had nuclear reactors on them. That was during the Soviet days, but they don't do those anymore because they're kind of bad when they crash on the ground. So, and then there's a communication system. So every satellite has to have a link to be able to talk to ground stations so they can pass their information back and forth and communicate.
What's a ground station?
Ground station is a place on the ground that waits for the satellite to go overhead and talks to the satellite, sends up information, and the satellite sends down information. So that's how we get pictures and images and things from the ground. Sometimes the ground stations will have these great big dishes because they're sending down, say, TV signals and things like that for satellite TV. So, but there's always usually a communication link with the ground. That's very important because that's how satellites are controlled, is from this place on the ground where it sends signals up to the satellite and gets information from the satellite back down. Okay, next. So as I mentioned, here's just kind of a quick sample of all these different types of satellites. There's meteorology, oceanology, remote sensing satellites, navigation. You have a space station up here we talk about. You have some manned spacecraft.
Yeah, so a satellite is basically anything that, does it have to go around Earth particularly, or anything?
It's anything that you put into an orbit. So
an orbit is something that goes around our planet.
So we have natural satellites. We talked about at the very beginning. Natural satellites are like the moon orbits the Earth.
Yeah. And
the Earth orbits the sun. So the Earth is a satellite of the sun.
Okay.
And these orbit the Earth. Those are the ones we're talking about now. But I want to talk a little more about.
MZ wants to know, what if the panel folds off, Dave?
Well, that's a good question. And that's a very important thing that they need to have. So they design the panels because they look kind of big and bulky.
Yeah, they're really big.
They stick way out there. Yeah. But when they make them, they design them so that they fold up.
Yeah.
And they hold,
like paper folding.
Yeah, and they fold up close to the spacecraft. And they use that because when they launch them, that shaking that they get in the rocket, they have to hold them and protect them. And then when they get to space, everything's very calm. Then they release them and they fold out. And it's pretty cool to see these things fold and stuff.
Okay.
They're like unfolding, like a origami, paper fold up thing.
Great question.
Yeah. But all these satellites you see, they got some sort of power. They need power. So when we talk about spacecraft, crewed spacecraft or a capsule, and we're going to talk about the Dragon one. This is the picture of the Dragon. So
what's the Dragon again?
Dragon's a crewed spacecraft or a capsule.
So that's where the people go,
yep.
or the delivery, and it's made by SpaceX, and they call their capsule Dragon, and the Dragon that has people in it is called Crew Dragon, right?
Crew Dragon. Yeah. Yep. Instead of just cargo, because they can just send up stuff with
cargo is just stuff.
So like we talked about satellites, you need energy, solar panels and battery, thermal control. You don't want it too hot or too cold.
It's like the radiators in our house, the heat system.
Yep, keeps everything just the right temperature that it needs to be. Then you have climate control. So with satellites, you don't really have a climate. They're open to the vacuum of space, but you have people in there. So you have to provide pressure so they can breathe and you need to provide clean air. So That's what that provides. Communications, they can
Your mobile
talk
phone.
back and forth between they're like, if you remember mission control communicates with the crew as they're flying. Well, ground station for a satellite is like mission control, you know.
So Ronnie wants to know, how fast does it orbit?
I will, good question. I'll talk
Coming
about,
up, Rania.
yep, I'll talk about that in just a minute. It's a good question. So hold that thought and I promise to address it. And we talked about, we have to be able to move these things around and orient them properly because they're going to do a mission in space. Mission may be to dock to the space station. So we have a maneuvering system. We call it guidance, navigation, and control, but it's really just for orienting and maneuvering. And we have a control system so they can control it when they need to. Because we have astronauts, they want to fly it, you know, they don't want to just sit there, I guess. And then for going to the space station, this little cap that pops open exposes what's called the docking mechanism. And that's simply allows them to connect up to the space station. They have something like that that connects up, makes it all seal up tight, and then they can go in.
It's like a parking space.
Yeah, it's you know, if you've ever been on an airplane,
Yeah.
you know, when you walk down to get on the airplane, you walk down that tunnel and it turns and they got the door open. Well, it's kind of like a docking system. It docks to the plane, allows you to go back and forth.
Right.
And then when they close the door, they pull that away and the plane moves. And
yeah,
that's kind of like a docking system.
Okay.
So I wanted to show.
Whoa, there's a lot in that picture, Dave.
Here's a bunch of different manned orbital spacecraft capsules.
Manned is a wrong word.
Right,
it means people.
The graphic came that way, so yeah. I'm not going to take
I have to fight for that. Crewed. So CREWED is the same thing as saying manned. They used to say that, but it's more appropriate to say crew. So it's crewed orbital spacecraft, which means it's for people.
So you're the crewed part. If you see this, there's this line drawn all across here. The part that's above that line is where the crew goes, and the part below it is where the crew doesn't go. It's just part of the support equipment for the spacecraft. So the first one, the Vostok, you know, you have the round ball on top, and then you have this part below. Mercury capsule, you know, there's just a little package on the bottom there that's used to help in reentry. We'll talk about that later. And all these different ones show.
So are they done by age? So the oldest one is the Vostok.
Yeah. So there's the dates, 1961 for Vostok.
So that's the one that the very first person flew in, which was Yuri Gagarin, and that was in 1961.
And then they keep increasing.
And then Mercury is when the first American person went up.
Yep.
And that would be Alan Shepard.
Yep. And then we have Gemini.
I think that was your man,
Glenn.
Yeah, Glenn. John Glenn.
Well, and they sent the Mercury up first on a smaller rocket called the Mercury, and then they sent up it on an Atlas to get it into orbit. So
an Atlas is a type of rocket.
An Atlas put it into orbit, like we've talked about, goes around, and I'll talk about the speed here in a minute.
The speed, and also somebody wants to know how big satellites are, Dave.
Well, so you get a little bit of a sense here. Here's
these are the people satellites capsules.
This one over here, if you look over on the right and you see this capsule here, and it's kind of pulled apart so you can see the different parts. But there's a picture of a human down at the bottom, so you can get an idea of the scale.
Yeah.
So that capsule that's in the middle here, it says Dragon spacecraft. You see a picture there. That holds 7 people.
Yeah, they've only had a maximum of 4 so far, but it does have.
That's the capacity.
Yeah, if you look at it, if you watch the launch tomorrow, they're going to be launching in a Dragon, and you'll see they have a load of space behind them.
Yeah.
And at the moment, because the International Space Station is so, you know, there's not many bedrooms for people. The people that come up on Dragon, initially, until the previous crew go home, they tend to sleep in their Dragon. So I think they use that space for sleeping in it as well.
So.
But I love this. You see the way you have the first stage, the interstage, the second stage. It shows you how the rocket works,
right.
And it shows you all the different, like we've talked about that, and then how small the actual piece where the people go is
Yeah.
in comparison to the rocket, which we've been going on and on and on about.
So this is why we talked about, how these rockets work. And when you get into orbit, you're kind of having to put two rockets together at least. So here you can see the first stage is the first rocket. And then you got a spacer that's just called the interstage. It's just a separator. Then the second stage is the second rocket.
Yeah.
There are two different rockets. And that second stage is what pushes it all the way into orbit. And then that top part called Dragon on there is the capsule. And the only part that comes back is this middle part. You got the windows where the people are. And the rest of it is...
It's amazing, isn't it? Like that something so big can only bring back something, only a tiny bit of it.
Over here on the lower right or lower left, you have the space shuttle. And it was unique because that whole space plane went into orbit and came back. So you see on the side, it has the solid rocket boosters. They're the first stage. Both of those help push it up. And then the big orange thing has fuel for the rocket engines on the back of the space shuttle. So when the solid rocket boosters finish, they drop off and the shuttle engines pushes it all the way into orbit. And then the big tank falls away. And the reason they put the engines on the shuttle instead of at the bottom of the tank is they could bring the space shuttle engines back with them and recycle them and reuse them. So this was the early days how we reused recyclable spacecraft. Yeah. So we're going to go now and talk about, well, how do you get down?
How do you get home? That's the thing people are always asking. Like, so you have this tiny thing, and the thing is, the capsule that you arrive to the International Space Station at just stays docked the whole time you're there. So whatever spacecraft you arrive in, it's a bit like having your own car. Like, when you go to a party, you don't go home in somebody else's car. You go home in the car that you came in. And it's exactly the same when you go to the International Space Station. You go home in the capsule that you arrived in. How do you do that?
Yep, I'm just looking up something that I wanted to share. So as we see, when you're in orbit, remember, it has to be going so fast that
because that's what Rania asked. Yes. How fast does it go?
It's constantly falling back towards the Earth, right? But because the Earth is round, as it falls back, it just simply continues on its trajectory and loops around the Earth in that constant falling state. Because the Earth is pulling it in, and the direction it pulls, it changes as it moves around the Earth. So it's kind of in a constant falling state. But the speed of that is
22,800 or 28,200 kilometers per hour.
It's about 27,000 kilometers an hour, yeah, or 7 kilometers per second.
So for Dundalk people, that's about driving, kind of going from the square in Dundalk to RD in 1 second. Yeah.
Yeah. So another way of expressing it that I'll introduce here is it's 25 times the speed of sound.
But what's the speed of sound, Dave? That doesn't make any sense.
So the speed of sound is how fast sound travels.
How fast does sound travel?
If you fly in an airplane, airplanes fly just below the speed of sound. So it's around, what was the airplane fly?
I don't know, 1,200 kilometers an hour or something?
Well, it's about 500 and just below 600 miles an hour.
So that's about 900. That's about 900 or 1,000 kilometers an hour.
So that's about the speed of sound. And so we're talking about 25 times that speed.
So you're going 25 times faster than in an aeroplane.
Yeah.
That's fast, isn't it?
No.
So that's what happens as you approach the Earth on your way home.
Yeah, because remember, it's going really, really fast and it's just missing the Earth all the time. But now we want it to not miss the Earth, but we want it to just come in. So we slow it down slightly, and then all of a sudden it's not falling to miss the Earth. It starts to come in and hit the atmosphere. And you see this picture, it really heats up.
Can I ask a question? Mm-hmm. Why doesn't it go straight down? Why does it have to cut it like the way, like when you talk about that, I imagine it's like swimming, the way, like if you were to take your whole body and just go, like to just jump flat and land on the pool, like on the water, you hurt yourself.
Yep.
But if you cut the water when you dive, you don't hurt yourself. Is that why?
Well, there's a different reason for it. Let me explain.
Yeah, so why doesn't it just go straight down?
Because, well, like when Alan Shepard went up, we talked about his capsule, right? He was the first American that went up.
So he just went up and went down.
He just went up and went down.
Yeah.
He didn't go into orbit.
Which is
So-
around. He didn't
which
go
he didn't
around
go
the Earth. He
around.
just went
So he
up
just
and he
went
went
straight
down.
up. And then at some point, he just stopped moving momentarily. And then all of a sudden the gravity pulls him straight back down. So he's kind of like, you know, he's just coming right back down.
Yeah.
So but when you're in orbit, to go that high speed, you're going 7.8
really
kilometers.
fast.
You got to really slow down as quickly, but not too fast. If you go too fast,
Maybe like a bullet.
well, what happens is when you're coming in, that pressure is slowing you down because you're pushing against that air. It holds you down. Like when you hold your hand out the window of a car as you're driving fast, you feel that wind hitting your hand. Well, think of that times 1,000. And that's this.
Your arm would come off.
Your arm would come off. So you want it to come in not too shallow and not too steep, because if you come in too steep, the forces on you would be so hard. When the
Say that again.
So when the astronauts,
So when you come in too shallow,
That-
you mean you come in too deep, too
yes,
straight.
you're going to be decelerated too fast.
There'll be too much force in the opposite direction from the air.
Yeah.
Okay.
So as I'm plunging into the atmosphere and it's slowing me down, remember we talked about how much we feel when we go up, we're pushed into the chair.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, it's pushing you out 4 to 5 times your weight as you're coming in.
Wow.
So if you go in too fast, it's going to be a lot harder. In fact,
Right.
at some point you start to look like pizza instead of a person because you'll be crushed if you're going too fast.
Yeah. Somebody said
straight in.
Mach 25. What did they mean? What's Mach?
Mach
What's Mach? The speed of
Mach
sound?
25. Mach 1 is the speed of sound. So
So it's 25
25
times.
is-
That's right.
exactly.
Very good. Whoever said that, well done. That's what we mean. We're just explaining it for people who don't know what Mach is.
Yeah.
So,
So
okay.
now, as again, this process of slowing down, you're pushing against the air that creates friction. And at these speeds, it's very hot. It gets up to 1,600 degrees C.
So,
So
okay,
for
so water
comparison-
boils at 100 degrees centigrade. So I wouldn't put my hand in a cup of boiling water, and I wouldn't advise you do either. So this is 1.5.
This is 16
Yeah,
times.
it's 100 and
No, 1,600.
600. So it's
1,600 times.
It's
That, 1,600 times.
60 times hotter than boiling water.
By comparison, remember we talked about volcanoes and lava? Well, about the hottest lava gets out there is 1,250 degrees C. So this is a lot hotter than that liquid rock.
Wow, that's very
So
hot.
it's very intense. So because it gets so intense and so hot, we have to protect that capsule also to just melt.
Yeah.
And in
Is
fact,
it plasma? They talk about plasma. Is it plasma that's outside, Dave, when they're flying back?
okay, so what happens is when the atmosphere is heated, that heat basically creates a plasma. So plasma is like the atmosphere is made out of molecules, right? They
Mhm.
have electrons and protons. It's so hot when you pull the energy is so high, those things come apart and they're just floating around. That's what a plasma is. It's when these electrons and protons separate. So, but it creates this glow. And so you have what they call a heat shield. You know, that's on the bottom, that blunt end force in there. It's taking that direct energy against it. A heat shield is a material that doesn't burn, but it chars. It's sort of, or you may have special tile like the space shuttle had that is a ceramic that's designed to take really intense heat like that. Yes.
Is it like an oven glove? It's like an oven glove.
In a way, yeah, you could think of it like an oven glove.
Yeah.
But it's like trying to think of an application. We have it's like when you look at wood that's been in the fire and it's heated up, it's like it looks like a charcoal kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, it doesn't burn, it just slowly breaks down, and that's how it protects it, by slowly breaking down and in that process. So you only have to have it for a few minutes and then it slows down and it's no longer going so fast, so it stops heating up.
Right.
And then once you get past this reentry where everything gets really hot and it slows down, and now it's starting to drop like a rock, right? It's
Right.
because all that energy that was making it go forward fast is now
And so
taken
it was
away.
being so the reason it goes in an angle is for the atmosphere to go. It's like pulling a brake.
Exactly. It's hitting the brakes of it wanting to go around the earth. Now it's just slowing it down so it'll drop like a rock. And
Right. Okay. So then it gets to a certain point where it's no longer, it's air doesn't have to push against it because it's slowed it down sufficiently that it starts to fall like all things fall.
Right.
Right.
When that happens, we bring it in like this, and it comes down and it pops a series of parachutes out, and then
beautiful.
the parachute makes it even go nice and gently until it hits the water. So we often do this. This is the Dragon capsule. It lands on water because the water acts like a cushion.
Yeah.
So it doesn't hit hard like it does on the ground.
Yeah.
But it can be inconvenient because now you got to get all these boats out there and go pull it out of the water. So other capsules, and this is one called the
That's the Starliner? No.
Starliner.
Yeah.
It is. It's the Starliner.
That's the one that didn't work last summer where we had the two astronauts.
Yeah, they had a problem with the Starliner. So you can kind of see the sequence from up in the left corner where they put the small parachutes out, and then they put bigger chutes out, and then they put bigger chutes out. And then at some point you can see the
bottom part
dropping off. That's that heat shield.
It's just
because now it's done its mission. They're just going to drop it. But you see these like bags underneath.
Yeah.
In the bottom of the picture there, and unfortunately got this.
They become like airbags.
They're like airbags. They're like big pillows. And so that's how it makes a soft landing on land, because the water does it as soft, but they need pillows to land on land.
Yeah. So the Soyuz as well also lands on land. It doesn't have the pillows at the bottom. So they use I think they just use little puffs of air, don't they?
No, they use little rocket motors.
The little rocket motors.
So what happens is just before they hit the ground, they fire these rocket motors
really
and
fast.
it's like, whoop, slows it. It just takes that speed out of it, so it lands gently.
Yeah. So Rania has a question, and I think it might be a question that we maybe talk later, because she wants to know, what is the biggest engineering challenge you faced in designing for space, and how did you overcome it? I think maybe, is it okay if we answer that in a few minutes, Rania? It's a really good question.
I'll finish my last slide here.
Yeah.
And
Thank you, Rania.
I'll answer
and
that.
Then somebody else said, what would happen if they land in a volcano?
Oh, well, you'd get cooked.
Yeah, you'd probably just melt.
The last one I have is, remember the space shuttle? The space shuttle would land like an airplane. Well, they have a new spacecraft they're building called the Dream Chaser. And it looks just like the space shuttle in many ways, right?
Yeah, but they don't know what the space shuttle is. Tell them what the space shuttle is.
Well, we talked about that earlier. We showed the space shuttle.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So when we saw the different capsules, the really big one,
the one that looks like an airplane, that's the space shuttle. So that ran from 1981 till 2011, and it was the main way that NASA put astronauts up in space, right?
Yep.
And then 2011 it stopped, and then for 10 years the only place that you could send astronauts to space was from Baikonur in a former part of Russia, and they used the Soyuz. And then in 2020, during the pandemic, the Crew Dragon did its first test, and then from October 2020 onwards, people have been launching again from NASA. So
So this is a vehicle right now. They're using it to carry cargo up.
Yeah.
And it can bring cargo back and bring it down on the ground. But the concept also would work for taking passengers up and back.
Yeah.
So anyway, to answer your question of what was my biggest challenge?
Yeah, that's a great question. So what is the biggest engineering challenge you faced in designing for space, and how did you overcome it?
Well, that's kind of a complex one, but I think the way I would put it is this: we have to design. I work with uncrewed space mission. I work, with astronauts and getting them up and back. So the whole concept, the whole challenge is, how do you get someone up, keep them alive, get them in space to do with their stuff, keep them alive, and have them bring it back to the ground and keep them alive. It's keeping people alive.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of work and a lot of design work. So when we launched the rockets, those rockets have to be very reliable. If you've ever seen pictures in the old days when we were first learning how to make rockets, a lot of them blew up. Well, that's not something you want to put an astronaut on, because you don't want to blow up astronauts, right? So there was a lot of work that had to be made to make those very, very reliable. And the way we design rockets and rocket motors ensures that they have a high level of reliability. Like aircraft, aircraft are very reliable, because if they don't, all these people will die if it just comes crashing down out of the air. It's not like your car, you pop a tire, or the engine stops, you just pull off the side of the road. Well, with an airplane or a spacecraft, you can't do that. So you have to make sure that they're very reliable. So once you get them, but the other thing is those rockets can't launch too fast, because if they did, they'll just crush the astronauts with the force that's hitting them. They can't be too strong. They have to be just enough that the people can handle the load. So you design them so that they can handle the load going up, and then they get up high enough, they're going to turn and speed up. So we have to design it so it never exceeds a certain load amount.
Load amount being?
The force against them when they're pushed.
So you're saying is that you could design super duper duper powerful rockets, but for humans, they would be very uncomfortable, or may not even be able to withstand the push initially of takeoff.
Okay. So you have to take care of that. Then, of course, you have to provide an environment for them that has pressure, and it has clean air, and it has the right temperatures, because we need all that to stay alive. So those capsules, or the crewed spacecraft,
like the Dragon,
they provide that safe environment inside for them. But in addition, as a backup also, they wear spacesuits. They're suits that do the same thing, that provide them with the atmosphere and the temperature control, and they provide clean air and all that. And they use that as a backup in case something happens. There's a leak or something. So we found it's important to have what we call backups or redundant systems like that.
Yeah. Does that answer your second question, Rania, as well? Because Rania's second question was, how do you account for human safety and comfort in the harsh environment of space? So, I mean, everything is about safety, isn't it? Everything. Safety is the most important thing of all the things you do whenever you send a human to space. It's absolutely, everything comes from safety, right?
Yeah. It's otherwise, we'll fail if the people die. That's just not acceptable. So,
and then comfort. So there's a type of designer. So the people that design houses and buildings are called architects. And so the people that design for humans in space, for interiors like the Dragon and like the International Space Station or any sort of space station, they're called space architects. And so they would specialize in trying to figure out how to make best use of space in space. And when we mean space, we mean like, floor space and bedroom space and stuff. And I've spoken to a few of them, and it's really interesting. They say what's amazing about when you design for space, it's not just like space in front of you, it's space above you, it's space behind you, because in space there's no up or down. So you have all these jobs to do, and you have all this equipment around you, but there always has to be some level of comfort for the people on board, because it can feel like living in a garage, So they would love it to be really comfortable for the astronauts, but then the scientists go, well, no, you have to have our experiments on board. So there's always sort of a slide scale, isn't there, Dave, between like comfort over their job versus cost versus safety.
So there's a term we use in engineering. What we design for is accommodating humans. It's called ergonomics.
Yeah.
So, for example, we try and make the seats that the astronauts ride in going up and coming back, we design them so that they support the astronaut very well. And what they do is they orient the seat so that when they're being pushed forward, or when they're being decelerated or slowed down by going in the atmosphere, it goes through their body, like directly through their body instead of down on their head or in a twisted way, because our body is easier to accommodate it in that direction. When you get into space, now you got things, you have to do things a little different. Like it can be uncomfortable for a while because your sensors for balance and stuff are all confused. And sometimes they get nauseated and sick. And so they have to give them time to adjust. But once they get used to floating around in space, it's actually kind of fun. These guys can just glide from place to place. When they sleep, they're just they have like a bag that they zip themselves up to so they don't drift off somewhere. But you know, the microgravity environment makes it easy for them to sleep and move around. But other things are a little more difficult, like they got to be careful what they eat so they don't create crumbs going everywhere.
Yep.
And they have to have special toilets so that they can do what they need to do without floating away and creating a mess. So you have to take all that into account. The other thing is you have to protect them from maybe little things in the space called debris, little things that might hit them. So there's some protection and insulation, but also radiation is a significant factor.
So it's a big topic.
Lots of things that you have to worry about when you're trying to make it safe and comfortable for them.
Did you enjoy designing for space, Dave?
That was boring. No, of course I loved it. I thought it was very interesting,
What was the most interesting thing for you about it?
It's just it's like I don't know, it's like making something like imagine trying to create something that's going to be used on the bottom of the ocean.
Yeah.
It's just thinking about how that's going to be and making it all work together, and then you design it and you test it and everything, and then
you see it.
You get to watch it as they put it together up there. Wow. And it all works and it's fascinating. And just to see it, because I've seen my stuff I worked on up there working for all these years in space, and I'm very proud of what I was able to do and make happen. So cool. Yeah. So, it's like designing a really impressive bridge or a new building. The architects, they see that lasts for a long time. It's just really cool to do something like that.
That's really cool. That's really cool. Okay, so Nathan wants to know, how big is a satellite? Let's go back to Nathan's question.
Oh, okay. Right. Let's see. My stop sharing has closed. So let me go back. I got to share again. Hold on just a second. Go back to what I was sharing. I'll do this one. So I'll go back to this. How big is the satellite? So this, you get an idea. This is there are satellites that are this big right here. This right here. Okay. This picture right here, this is like a space shuttle, right? Can you see this picture right here? I don't know if you see yeah, you can. That's quite big. This open area in the middle is big enough to hold like a bus. So that's quite big. Right next to it, you see this like mini satellite. That's the size of a bread box.
Yeah. So I think this is about the size. So there's a satellite, there's only one satellite that Ireland launched, and it's called AirSat, EIRSAT. I'll just type that in the chat and you can look at it afterwards. It's in caps. So AirSat, EIRSAT. So that was launched in December 2023. And it was called, they used a type of block of satellites. There's these kind of defined sizes, 10 centimeters by 10 centimeters by 10 centimeters. And they used two of them, one on top of each other. So it sort of looked like, I'm just looking at this menu here because we're in
thinking about the size of a loaf of bread, right?
It's kind of like yeah, exactly the size of a loaf of bread. That's perfect.
Right.
But the building block is half a loaf of bread. So most satellites that use this system called a CubeSat, it would be half a loaf of bread. So they can get really small. And then there's satellites called nanosats. How small are they, Dave?
Oh my gosh, you
They're
can
about
get
the size of a Rubik's Cube, aren't they?
they can be really, really small, depending on what they're trying to do.
Yeah, like they can
And
be really small. I'm trying
and
to find
now
something
just
small.
remember, if an if an astronaut's out working on the space station and he lets go of his wrench, that becomes a satellite. So
Yeah, that was
anything
satellite,
else
yeah.
that you live.
Yeah.
So the satellites go from the small to big, like the space station is the size
It's a
of like a
football
football
field.
field.
Yeah.
It's really big. These other satellites, like this one, I say this is the size, typical size of a large satellite. The Orion Dragon,
You're showing
although
your
it's
age. What's a bread box? Somebody says.
Hmm?
Somebody asks, what's a bread box? You're showing your age.
A bread box is it's a box that they put bread in. It's
But
just
just
the
think of
size of a loaf of
slight
bread.
of a loaf of bread. That's what it means.
That's what a bread box
It's
means.
just we're a lot older than you. Sorry.
Yeah. So anyway, they go from small to quite large, depending on what they need to do. When you put these satellites out for communication, you put them out very, very far. So they kind of, as they orbit, they kind of stay over one point of the Earth at a time because they're so far out. They have to make the antennas and the solar panels so big because they got to get a lot of power because they're so far away. Those are the biggest satellites.
Yeah.
When so we put a satellite up that was launched in the space shuttle, and you see the space shuttle in this picture here. It was a telescope the size of a bus. Okay. And so the ones we have a few like that are spaced out quite a ways away from Earth so that they are able to view the stars and be away from other satellites. And they're about the same size, about the size of a bus. So
Wow.
that's kind of the big end.
Yeah.
And then everything down to little tiny things. So
we also go like, why don't they put like 60 engines on rockets? So I think we've kind of answered your question, but Dave, repeat again, why don't we put like a ton of rockets on the bottom, the ton of engines on the bottom of rockets?
So you need to generate enough thrust to get you up,
thrust,
enough push to get you up there. So you have enough engines to lift this heavy thing off, but you don't want to go too fast too soon because the force that it generates would just crush people inside.
Yeah, it would push down. Do you know what I mean? Like
just they wouldn't be able to breathe, and then it would just like swoosh them if they were.
Okay, so say for instance, so as a comparison, imagine you're in a car and it goes really, really fast, and then suddenly you hit the brakes. What happens to people in the car? They get pushed forward. Okay, so in the same way, but the movement is different. It would be exactly the same. If they go too fast, it actually is really painful for the astronauts, right? Yeah. So you have to go fast enough to be able to overcome the force of gravity that's pulling you to the ground, but not so fast that you're almost kind of out of control.
Yeah, I think if you're lying on the ground and you have like a cat, you put a cat on your chest. Well, it's not weigh very much, so it's easy, it's comfortable. Well, if you put now a big dog on your chest, it'd be a lot heavier. Now just think of your dad, your dad's sitting on your chest, and it'd be like,
yeah,
it would be hard to breathe. And that's the problem is, the more weight you get, it makes it harder and harder to breathe and for your body.
And so what Dave's saying is that if your rocket goes really fast, that's the effect it has on the astronauts in the spacecraft. It's called G-force. So it's the force, the number of times you feel more than the gravity that we're used to. So the faster you go, the more G-force your body's going to feel, and that's not comfortable.
Yeah. So Ronnie is trying to ask you a question.
What's your question? I have a question for Niamh. Yeah, just tell us your question. Ask your question. It's a box for bread. Yeah, that's right.
So let me answer this one right here. What is a medical emergency?
Yeah, that's a great question, Nathan.
So really good question. What happens if you have a medical emergency in space? So if they get like a burn or puncture or something like that, then they have basic medical equipment there.
And all astronauts are trained in basic medical procedures.
They're all trained to handle, basic medical stuff. But let's say if you have, and of course, you try and send up very, very healthy people so that they don't have a heart attack or something like that. This is one of the reasons why there's such restrictions on who you send to space, because you have to be in good physical shape.
Yeah.
But it's a good question. So let's say they do have an emergency. Well, appendicitis could be one, right? what they would have to do in that case is they're going to have to bring them down as soon as possible.
Yeah.
So they would probably have to cut the mission early, like they're on the space station, and the crew would then go
All
to
the crew, the
the
whole
whole crew
crew.
would have to
Okay,
come,
yeah.
because the reason the whole crew would come back is
Because how they get home, because it's
that
all,
is that's their ride
they
home.
all arrived in the same
Yeah.
car, so they have to go home in the same
And
car. Yeah.
that's a safety reason. They
Yeah.
don't want to leave people up there with no way to get home if there's a problem, right? So anyway, they would have to come back to the ground, and then they would get them to medical care as soon as they got on the ground. So they handle the simple stuff while they're on orbit, you know, like you would if you went to a doctor and he, you know, bandaged you up, or, you know, had, you know, treated you. They have some basic medications, I'm sure, to handle basic things. But if it's something really serious, life-threatening, they're gonna bring them down.
Yeah, and they're in touch with the doctor as well. Like they can call the doctor, like the way we're talking now online. So they have a doctor on call all the time, and so they would have monitors on them all the time.
Yeah.
So they would basically get to a point where they would go, okay, it's too dangerous, we have to send them down. So there'll be a series of procedures.
So typically the astronauts also have sensors on them.
Yeah.
So the doctors are
They would
monitoring
know.
their heart rate, they're monitoring their breathing, they're monitoring a number of things just to keep an eye on them while they're up there.
Yeah.
Because astronauts are probably notorious for saying, I'm great when
they don't want to go home.
when there's something wrong. So
because they're having too much of a good time. Now you have a follow-up question about the 60 rockets. So if they make something that can help you breathe, can you use 60 engines?
Well, so what we've done is, because this is a problem with people that fly fighter jets, is when they do these super tight turns as they're going fast, they have to deal with this pressure on them, right?
Yeah.
As well. And so they've done lots of tests to figure out what level can people handle. So for very short periods of time, they can handle maybe up to 10 times the force of gravity. But let's say you weigh like an adult weighs around 100 kilos, right? That would be 1,000 kilos on him. So he may not even be able to breathe while that's happening because the load is so strong. So it can only happen for a short period of time, maybe up to a minute or so.
Yeah, and also I think they'll pass out. So it's not just about breathing, it's about how your blood flows, how your heart works. So we're designed for this gravity. So we can, like fighter pilots and stuff, you'll see them, they all do their centrifuge training and all that kind of stuff. And that's to get them to feel like that they can build up strength in order to be able to deal with up to 4 times the force of gravity or whatever. So what Dave's talking about is like 60 times more than that. So if you watch any videos about fighter pilots and they bring somebody up, people will pass out. People will pass out. So it's not just about like breathing. It's just your body actually will not work.
So fighter pilots also, they wear a special suit.
Yeah.
It's a anti-G suit, they call it. And what it does, for example, the way they're oriented, they're sitting up in the chair. When they do a tight turn, it's like pulling the body out of their brain and out of their body downward. So they have the suit that puts air pressure and squeezes their legs and squeezes their body to try and hold the blood up. Because if the blood drains from the brain, you're going to pass out because you can't think anymore. But they can only do that for short periods of time. When you're launching in a rocket, you're going to be in that for minutes. And so they really have to hold the thrust levels down. So what you can do is, and this is one of the reasons one of the benefits, if you will, of using staged rockets. When I use that first stage, I got to go from 0 to some speed and get as fast as I can while still being safe with the astronauts. But now when I get into space, and I'm already going pretty fast, I can keep accelerating faster to be, so it's the acceleration, not the speed, that affects how much it compresses you. So I keep accelerating, and as I get into space, and as long as you don't exceed the rate of acceleration to a point where the load gets too high, then they'll be safe. But this is why
So that's
they limit the number
the
of
rate
engines.
how fast it goes. So
Yeah.
we're going to stop questions now. Maybe next week we'll just do all questions, because I did promise people that we'd see some images of the pyramids, because we did say we do that tonight. But Rania, one last question. I'm going to answer Rania's question, and then we're going to go to the pyramids, and then I'm going to tell you about the launch tomorrow to watch. So Rania's question was, what is one scientific project or discovery you've worked on that has had a real impact on our town? Oh my gosh, Rania, I don't know.
Well, I can tell you one that I had. So when
And Dundalk.
it had an impact on
Yeah,
Dundalk, it had an impact on everywhere.
Okay, I'll keep thinking. I think this was Rania's question to me, but you
Oh.
answer it. No, you answer it, and I'll keep thinking, because maybe you'll remind me of something.
Well, there's a project that I worked on. We sent up a telescope called the Hubble telescope. And when they got up into space and they opened up and went to look at the stars, they noticed that everything was blurry. It's like I wear glasses because if I try and look far away, everything's blurry. So they realized they had made a mistake when they built the lens in there. And so they had to send up essentially glasses to fix it. So I was part of the group that helped train the astronauts to do that repair. So we did it in a big tank of water, and we put a mock-up. A mock-up is like a model that we put in the water of this big telescope. It's the size of a bus, right? And we put it in the water. And the reason we did it in the water is because water is one of the best ways for us to simulate on the ground what it's like to float in space. So we can get the astronauts to kind of be floating around so they can actually practice what it would be like in space while they're floating to repair this. So when we did that and they went up and did the repair, they fixed it, it worked perfect. We were given some of the most gorgeous views and improved our understanding of the whole world of what the what the stars look like.
Yeah, wow, that's amazing.
And whenever we send up a new telescope, they open us to, they improve on things. And so we actually learn more and more each time. So
yeah. So for me, Rania, thankfully Dave gave me time to think. I mean, this was when I was 16 or so. So I applied for the Young Scientist competition, the one that happens in Dublin every year. And I worked with my teacher in my school, my chemistry teacher in my school, and two of my classmates. And we tested all the water. We tested 4 of the water supplies into the town, and we tested them for over a year. And we found out which source of water was giving the biggest problems, because at the time there was one source of water that was giving people lots of stomach problems. And so we did a ton of tests, and we helped the county council figure out where the problem was, and we won an award for that. So I think that's the scientific discovery that I've had that's brought something useful to the town. So yeah, I'm going to pause the questions because Sean really wants to see the pyramids, and we did say we were going to do the pyramids. So if we've time, we'll keep doing questions, or if not, we'll continue with more questions next week.
We'll try and come back to your questions, but let's go ahead. Hold on.
Yeah, and we have to do that as well. So let's look at pyramids, and we'll finish with that, Dave.
As you wish.
Yeah, because we've 7 minutes, so I just want to make sure we do this. So let me share my screen. So so let me see. I'm going to go to this. So these are some videos of pyramids. So our first glimpse of the pyramids. I'm going to show you this one. So can you see that? No, stop share, and let me go back into share, and there we go. So this was the first time we saw the pyramids. It was amazing. So Sean, this is for you.
Yeah, the full one is 147 meters tall.
You don't need to hear the volume. It was amazing. The way you see these things in pictures and your history books, and then suddenly they're right in front of you. What was your impression, Dave, when you saw the pyramids for the first time?
You see pictures like this, but gosh, when you get up next to the pyramids, they're just stunning. They're so big.
They're so big, and there's so many of them.
You can kind of, well, it's hard to see there, but
I'm gonna
they're little. Each block is as big as a person.
Yeah, each brick is the same height as me. And it's crazy. And there's 3 main ones. There's a big one, a middle-sized one, and a small one. And they were all built at different times, right?
Yeah, they're actually the tall one was built first, then the second, and then third one, because it was Grandpa, the second king, and then the son. They were all
It
related.
feels like, because even the
Ramses.
fact that there's camels and everything around there, and that people are dressed, you know, like in their local traditional costume because it's so hot, it genuinely felt like I was stepping back in time.
Yeah.
Did it feel like that for you?
Well, the
Yeah.
history there was just a mind-boggling.
Let me line up another video. So you keep watching that, and then I'm going to line up another video while you do that. Let me see. 3 pyramids in one view. What do you think? 3
Something
pyramids
up
in one view.
close. Do you have any up close?
Oh yeah. 3 pyramids. So mid pyramid up close. There we go. So I'm going to stop sharing that, and I'm going to share this one. This one. So I'll share this. And again, I'm going to turn the volume down because the volume it's really noisy there. There's a lot of people looking. So tell us what we're looking at here, Dave.
So we're up close to one of the pyramids.
The middle one.
The middle one. And what you're seeing is you can see all those blocks. They're just stacks of blocks upon blocks upon blocks. Each one of those blocks that's over at the pyramid, not the ones in front of us because they're smaller, but you get right to where the base of the pyramid is, they're as tall as a person.
They're as tall as me.
And you just think of that, and you just imagine that going up, how many.
Yeah, I'm going to find another one. Keep talking there.
How many people that would be? It's just huge. And it just, the amount of labor, that work that had to get those blocks and bring them there from where they had to cut them out of the quarry, you know, where they find the rocks in the ground, and then they shape them and then they bring them there and stack them. It's just incredible. Unbelievable amount of effort that went into making these things.
Like it really does feel like where's the one I want to show you? Wandering through the pyramids. That's the one I want to show you. Like maybe when we wander through them, I think actually they'll understand better the size, because Dave's wandering around here and you can use him as a reference to the size of everything. So
is this the pyramid, or is this still the walkway?
This is the size of the pyramid. So you'll see that, and this is one of the smaller ones. This isn't one of the major ones. This is us just wandering around. Look, there's me wandering around. You get off me. You don't need to see me. Yeah. So you see me and you see how big everything is. It's crazy. It's also very, very hot, isn't it?
Actually, we were kind of cool. That was a cool day for us, unfortunately, because otherwise it's very hot.
It was very warm for me. So you see, Dave, you see how big the rocks are beside Dave? And these aren't even the pyramids. This is just the stuff hanging around the pyramids.
The pyramids are actually, the rocks are bigger.
And there was hieroglyphics everywhere. Like you'd find hieroglyphics
What
just
are hieroglyphics?
Here. Hieroglyphics are like the code, you know, when you see them etched in of birds and like snakes.
It's their
language.
It's their alphabet. They use pictures of hieroglyphics. They use pictures to communicate, to mean things.
Well, yeah, this is a good one. Let me just share this one. Where am I? Share. This is a good one. This was on my phone, actually, this one. Share. Yeah, this one was like a step back in time. I mean, look, it looks like a movie. It's crazy.
Like an Indiana Jones
movie. I thought I was in Indiana Jones the whole time I was there. I really did. And can I show you some of the museum? Oh, I have to show you some of the museum. That was just like amazing. So we went to this museum in the middle of the city, and it was like going into Indiana Jones. Let me just share my screen again. Like some of the stuff was amazing that we saw. So this was one of the headdresses of the of one of the kings, but like it wasn't the fancy one. I wasn't allowed to film this, but I did anyway because I didn't know I wasn't allowed to. Where is it? It should be, I would imagine it's this one, maybe. No, 1 second now. Turn this one on. Oh, let me go to here. I think it's probably this one. Yeah, this is the one. This is amazing. So you're not allowed to film here, but I didn't know. I just started recording, and then Dave said, "You're not allowed. You're not allowed." And I was like, "Oh, sorry," but I'm really glad that I did, because this is Tutankhamun's stuff. So tell them about who Tutankhamun is.
So Tutankhamun was a young king. He died
he was 19.
I think 19. But he was famous because it's the only tomb that they found that had not been disturbed and raided. So they found everything in its original state, and this is all made out of gold. And gems and stuff. It's just gorgeous.
And that was gold. And so they put that on top of the mummy, and then they put him in a gold coffin. And then they had an outer coffin that was also painted in gold. And he was found in 7 or 9 coffins or something.
Yeah. The last one was made out of stone.
They get crazy. Let me show you something else. Let me see what else have I got here. Oh yes, some hieroglyphics. Let's show you. So we talked about hieroglyphics. So this is what we mean when we talk about that. So hieroglyphics was like their secret, not their secret, it was their language, wasn't it, Dave?
Yeah.
So look at all the paintings
So
here
they make pictures
with symbols.
to where we would have letters. They use pictures of things to communicate, to express themselves.
And they were beautiful. I mean, they were so beautifully painted. And a lot of them were still full color. A lot of them were in great condition. Let me see what else have I got here. This might be a good one. Oh yeah. Oh my gosh, this is really crazy. I want to show you this one. And then we better stop. Dave, you can start. I'll put back David. So I just walked around this place and it was an old museum. It was a dusty old museum. And I just walked into this alcove and it was full of mummies. Like, watch. Like, I was like, what? These are all mummies.
So these are the actual bodies that are wrapped. So they're wrapped in a special linen and cloth. And then, of course, they decorate them and paint them. And if you're more, depending if you're very poor, it may be very, very light. But these are the bodies.
They were just there.
That were
Nobody
around.
was making a big deal out of it. And I was like,
so they have quite a few mummies, of course, that have been found over time that have been buried there. So it's very dry and it's a very hot place. So these things stay well preserved for thousands of years.
They even had a mummy open. So if you want to watch that, tell me and we can play it next week because it could freak some of you out. I got a fright when I saw it. I was like, what is that? I don't believe it. But yeah, it was incredible. We can show you more next week. Dave, I'm going to pass to you so you can show them what's in the back. There is so many.
We don't want to forget your questions.
So we have, do the special pilot suits hurt? How many astronauts have died in space? How long can you? So I'm going to write these down and we're going to answer these next week. And let's focus on questions next week.
Yeah, those are good
please, please, when somebody said, please let us watch. Oh, I can't. Where is it? I can't see that. I can't see it.
Well, we got a few minutes left. So actually we're running over, but
yeah,
I'm going to open this up just so that you kind of get an idea of what's in this rocket bag. So you guys want to see this?
Yes, we do. Go for it, Dave.
Okay. So
what do you get? So everyone's going to get one of these. And
here's what the rocket will look like when you put it together. Okay. And here's what the parts look like. Okay. And when it gets all assembled, this is the launch pad that we're going to put it on, and we're going to light them up, and they're going to shoot up into the air. So here's the body of the rocket.
Yeah.
There's a nose cone. This is the front end of the rocket. Okay. There we go. You can see it. Yep. And then these are called the fins. These all snap together to put the bottom of the rocket. And then there's a parachute system. So it comes down like the capsule we saw.
So you have this bit. And where's the other bit?
There's this.
So there's 3 bits.
I'm showing them over here.
Oh yeah, show them over there. So we're gonna show you how to put this together. And this is something that you'll be able to use many times, long after we're finished our rocket class. And we might continue to launch rockets for years, because that's going to become your first rocket, and you could get the buzz, you could get you could fall in love with rockets, and then that's your first one. That's how Goddard, who ended up becoming a very important man in American rocket design, that's how he started. He built his own rockets. So we're going to try and inspire you to at least go on a rocket launch with us. So we better finish up. I loved that session. Did you, Dave?
Yeah. We got lots of great questions. So we'll answer those.
Yeah,
we'll capture.
And people want to see more of the Egyptian video, so we'll show them that. Yeah. So tomorrow at lunchtime, we have a launch of our European astronaut called, I'm just going to show you Axiom. Where is my internet? Sorry, I was going to line up my internet first. Let me go back to Zoom. Now my internet is, where is it? So if I go here, if I go to my internet and then I go to here, so the launch of yeah, here it is. Here we have a launch of a Polish European astronaut on Axiom. So Axiom 4. So go to, if you're interested, go to axiomspace.com and go to their homepage. I'm going to go all the way up to the top. I've just got a few things up here. And if you go to missions and go to Axiom Mission 4, that's actually in Mission 1. Axiom Mission 4, these are the 4 astronauts that are launching tomorrow. And we have a Polish guy, and he's from the European Space Agency. We have somebody from Hungary. We have somebody from India. And then we have Peggy Whitson, who's one of my favorite female astronauts. She's the commander. And they're going to go up to the International Space Station for 2 weeks. And this is kind of like a private space station mission. So Axiom are a company that are for hire, and what they'll do is they provide they work with SpaceX, and they hire SpaceX's Falcon 9 rocket and the Crew Dragon that we were talking about to launch them to the International Space Station. The European Space Agency and Poland have worked together for our European astronaut here, Sławomir, to go. And we'll be able to keep track of his mission, Ignis. So they are scheduled. They were supposed to launch today, but the weather is bad in Florida. So they're going to launch tomorrow at 8 a.m. Florida time, which is 1 p.m. Irish time. So even if you don't see it online live, go to YouTube and look for Axiom 4, and you'll see it played back, and you'll be able to see a live launch.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, guys.
We're all wondering what happens tomorrow. We'll see. We'll find out.
We'll report next week about it. But lovely questions, guys. I'm going to write them all down. Thank you so much for saying that a little bit yesterday. Best session yet. Brilliant. Nathan, why was it the best session yet? I'm going to give you a feedback form next week because we want to know what you like. We don't want to just talk for the sake of talking. We want to make sure that we give you what you want. So tell us why it was the best session yet. Okay. Thank you so much. We really enjoyed it too.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Great questions.
See you next week, everybody. Bye.